And we're live. Welcome to Love and Money Secrets TV. I'm your host, Dame Lillian Walker, and we are here in beautiful Newport Beach in Southern California. And I'm so happy and excited to be diving in deep with Chapter 8 of Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So let's get started. Chapter 8, Meditation, Demystifying the Mystical and Waves of Your Future. So in the previous chapter, I wrote about the need to bridge the space between who we really are and the image we present to the world. When we're able to do that, we can take steps towards freeing up the necessary energy to become the ideal self, modeled after some of the great people in the history of the world, such as Gandhi and Joan of Arc. And as I've said, one of the keys to breaking the habit of being yourself is working toward being more observant, whether that entails being more metacognitive, monitoring your own thoughts, embracing stillness, or focusing more attention on your behaviors and how elements in your environment might trigger emotional responses. So the big question here is, how do you do all of this? So in other words, how do you become more observant? Break your emotional bonds with the body, the environment, and time, and close the gap. The answer is simple: meditation. You may have noticed that up to this point in the book, I have teased you with the brief allusions to meditation as the way to break the habit of being yourself and begin to create a new life as your ideal self. I told you that the information in parts 1 and part 2 of this book would prepare you to understand what you will be doing when you apply the meditative steps you will practice in part 3. So now it's time to explain the inner workings of the process that I refer to as meditation. So when I use the term meditation, an image of a person seated cross-legged in front of a shrine at a home, a bearded and gowned yogi sitting in a secluded cave in the Himalayas, or some other visual may come to mind. So that individual may be a representation of what you understand is the way to go quiet. Empty the mind, focus all of one's attention on a thought, or engage in any of the other various or variations of the practice of meditation. So there are a lot of meditative techniques. But in this book, my wish is to help you produce the most desirable benefit of meditation, being able to access and enter the operating system of the subconscious mind so that you move away from simply being yourself and your thoughts, beliefs, actions, and emotions to observing those things. And then once you're there, to subconsciously reprogramming your brain and body to a new mind. So when you move from unconsciously producing thoughts, beliefs, actions, and emotions and take control of them through the conscious application of your will, you can unlock the chains of being your old self to become a new self. So how you get to the point at which you are able to access that operating system and bring the unconscious into your consciousness is the subject we'll cover throughout the rest of this book. One definition of meditation: becoming familiar with self. So in the Tibetan language, to meditate means to become familiar with. So I want to stop right here because a lot of people have certain paradigms and certain notions, as he alluded to earlier in this chapter. And he talked about how, you have these grand images of either this yogi or this monk in a cave. And it could be that your paradigms of what meditation is or isn't, this book and these practices may challenge those paradigms because they may not fit neatly into the boxes that you thought meditation was. And here he's also revealing to you that in the Tibetan language, the word meditate actually means to become familiar with. So this is why I've been saying for some time now, if you've been following me for any length of time or been watching any of the videos that I produce, you'll hear me say oftentimes that the greatest work that we come to do in this lifetime is to learn self-mastery. It's to master oneself. That is what the exercise of meditation is, where you come to know the difference between your awareness, and then you take your focused awareness and you are able to distinguish that being separate from the ego mind and from the brain itself as an organ and how it stores information in it. And it recalls your past thoughts, feelings, and emotions, both those that are the thoughts that are recorded as memories in your brain and as the emotions that your brain has filed into your actual flesh and blood body, because your body will have an emotional response independent of your brain. Oftentimes it's together, but it's not uncommon for you to have an independent experience in the body separate from your brain, which is why I mentioned to you all that during my experience in Cancun, when I was 50 feet up in the air, walking that plank that was only the width of my feet, that even though my brain wasn't recognizing, acknowledging, or knowing fear, my body started to betray me, and it was recalling a past emotion of, of obvious fear and of nervousness, because my legs started to shake. And I immediately realized, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not afraid. Why are my legs shaking? And I'm like, obviously my body was worried. It was fearful. And so I also recognized I can't afford this energy leak. I cannot afford to be wasting energy. It takes a lot of energy for your body to shake. You lose a lot of heat. It was warm outside, so the heat part didn't matter. The energy expansion was a big deal because I needed to focus all of my attention. It's hard enough to balance on something so narrow that was just the width of my feet, and to have my legs shaking, that was going to increase the odds that I was going to fail. So I had to take command of my body, hit the pause button, and say, no, brain, this is not cool. This is not acceptable. And ego, out of here. You may be saying, no, you can't do this. What are you, crazy? But no, I had to shut up the ego. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to take that. And my brain, I had to command my brain, say, brain, the conscious awareness that I am, my soul, I am the master. You are the servant. You do as I say. Stop my body shaking. Stop my legs shaking. I need all of the energy of my entire body to be focused on accomplishing the goal of balancing and walking steadily to the other side so I can make it to the other side, to the next platform. And then the rest is history, as you know from the previous chapters that we've talked about this. But I had to master myself. I had to know myself enough to recognize that my conscious awareness, which is unconditional love, which is where my true power lies, is in that state of being in unconditional love in my heart space, is independent to my ego and to the organ of my brain, which is the vibrational interpreter of all of my senses and all of my energy. And I needed to recognize that my brain and my ego, although I thought it was me, it wasn't the real me. It was, if you will, masquerading as me, but it wasn't the real me. And once I was able to make that distinction, oh, this feels much different than this. Once you really get into it, you realize this feels much better than this. And it's like, all I have to do is say no to this. Now I get it. Okay, anything that's remotely like this, it's going to be a hell no. No, I'm the master. I know you're going to kind of kick and scream and you're not going to want to give in at the beginning, but I don't care. I'm very clear on this now. Very, very clear. No, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get sad. I'm not going to get worried. I'm not going to toil. I'm not going to get all jacked up in a negative way, because that's what everybody else does. In light of something unwanted, that's where everybody goes. I'm not going to get sad. I'm not going to get depressed. I'm not going to do, no, because that's not the real me anyhow. That's my brain and my ego doing a number on me. making me believe that that's the real me, but it's not the real me. My conscious awareness, this is the pure, real me. And it's not the most loving thought to think that I can't, or that I'm not going to be enough, or that I'm not good enough, or that I'm not doing something right, or maybe I forgot something, or what am I doing wrong? Or you get the picture of all that negative, icky chatter that doesn't serve you. So now, once you're in that awareness, and it doesn't take that long for you to master that, in my opinion, but it is a practice. Every time something unwanted shows up, you have to exercise it. It's like, oh, instead of reacting, I'm gonna hit the pause button. I'm gonna hit the pause button. And what I did was, and what I did and what I continue to do, my MO is in the face of something unwanted, it's like hit the pause button. I hit the pause button. What am I gonna do next? I'm going to slow down my heart rate, slow down my breath, and slow down my brain waves. And I'm gonna get into heart and brain coherence. And I'm gonna put myself into theta state on purpose. With my eyes open, my eyes closed doesn't make a difference. I'm gonna do it with my eyes open, and I'm going to now focus on what it is that I want in my mind's eye, because now my hands are on the steering wheel. So now, as I put my focused awareness on what it is that I want in the quantum field, whether my eyes are open or closed, I have a picture in the motion picture screen of my mind of what it is that I want, because I have clearly defined here the unwanted. So it's easy to define now the opposite. I've got unrest, I have, violence, I have whatever. Okay, I want peace, I want love, I want joy, I want good feelings. So you now put that there, and then you start, as you're putting your awareness on it, now those potential waveforms of energy, they start to turn into particles, one after the other. The longer I focus on whatever it is, whatever point in time that I am focusing on, it's turning into more, from potential energy waveforms, it's turning into more mass, more material, because more and more particles are starting to accumulate. They start to coalesce. They're like gelling. And then as I wrap that with love and broadcast love over that whole thing, and I have the elevated emotion of love, of excitement, of joy, then the bow on the gift is the ultimate state of receivership, of course, is gratitude and appreciation to hold it in higher regard. And then right after that, you have to surrender and let it go. You don't know when it's going to happen, but you know it's going to happen. And so in eager anticipation, you live each day. I think that's part of the reason why you wake up joyous, is because now you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what surprise, what serendipities, what unexpected things that are going to pop into my experience today, but bring it on. And you know that the unexpected can bring you a lot of pleasant things. And even those things that don't seem to be pleasant are course corrections to get you onto the path where you're supposed to continue to go, to pull in the manifestation that you want. So let's continue here. I use the term meditation as a synonym for self-observation, as well as self-development. After all, to become familiar with anything, we have to spend some time observing it. In this case, we're observing, of course, ourselves and our thoughts, our conditioned, familiar pattern of thinking. Again, the key moment in making any change is going from being it to observing it. Another way to think of this transition is when you go from being a doer to a doer watcher. An easy analogy I can use in that is that, an easy analogy I can use is that when athletes or performers, golfers, skiers, swimmers, dancers, singers, or actors want to change something about their technique. So most coaches have them watch videotapes of themselves. So how can you change from an old mode of operation to a new one, I don't know why I'm getting tongue-tied here. So how can you change from an old mode of operation to a new one unless you can see what old and new look alike? So it's the same with your old and your new self. How can you stop doing things one way without knowing what that way looks like? I frequently use the term unlearning to describe this phase of changing. So, this process of becoming familiar with the self works both ways. You need to see the old and the new self. You have to observe. Yeah, you're going to observe yourself so precisely and vigilantly, as I've described, that you won't allow any unconscious thought, emotion, or behavior go unnoticed. So, since you have the equipment now to do this because of the size of your frontal lobe, you can look at yourself and decide what you want to change in order to do a better job in life. So, decide to stop being the old you. So when you can become conscious of those unconscious aspects of the old habituated self rooted in the operating system of the subconscious, you are beginning the process of changing anything about yourself. So, what steps do you normally take when you get serious about doing something differently? You separate yourself from your external world. I'm going to hit the pause button right here because that's exactly what we do when we go to a 7-day advanced event that Dr. Joe conducts anywhere in the world, and he has his monastery there. What we're doing is we're retreating from the day in, day out habituation that we call our lives. You know, if you're an accountant, if you're a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a teacher, an agent, a broker, whatever, investor, whoever, whatever it is that you are, you're going to take yourself out of that identity of who you wake up every morning to perform this action, and you're defining yourself by that action that people are paying you to be. It could be an entrepreneur, a business owner, it doesn't matter. But you're out of that normal MO, your modus operandi. And now you are retreated into a different place, in a different country, in a different environment, with different habits of when you wake up and you go to sleep, with different habits as you conduct yourself throughout the day. You're in a different space and time where you're with 1,000 other people. You don't know what they do for a living. They don't know what you do for a living. You're all there for the common goal of learning from Dr. Joe, and you're there either to heal something, it could be physical, emotional, financial, psychological, relational, or maybe multiple aspects of yourself, and or to experience a mystical experience, or perhaps you're wanting to manifest wealth, or whatever it is. But everybody is there to do this work and to learn how to master themselves and leave their old ways of being behind, so that they can become the better version of themselves and the highest, purest form of themselves. Okay. So what steps do you normally take when you get serious about doing something differently? You separate yourself from your external world long enough to think about what to do and not to do. You start becoming aware of many aspects of the old self, and you begin to plan a course of action related to a new self. Okay, I'm going to hit a little pause button here because something that I did back in 2000, I think it was 2017. It's either 16, yeah, it's either 17 or 18. I decided to quit sugar. And now this is something, for me, I loved eating ice cream every night. I loved having Twix bars, Nestle's Crunch, you name it, milk chocolate. Oh, just good. I have a chocolate, just love chocolate, hot chocolate milk. I just love it. And because I don't get acne, I don't get blackheads, I don't gain weight easily because I've always been pretty physically fit, I didn't have to worry and not eat chocolate because of the consequence that it would either damage my skin or that it would damage, make me gain weight. I didn't have to worry about that. So there was no reason not to have it. And of course I had it in moderation, but I had it frequently, probably way too much than I probably should have, without a shadow of a doubt, because there's a lot of sugar. Long story short, I decided to get rid of sugar in my diet, but I didn't do it while staying at home. I went to Santa Cruz Island here off the coast of Ventura. For 3 days, I did a health reset. And during that health reset, I had no sugar for those 3 days. And I learned that I could substitute using raw organic sugar. I could substitute it with using maple syrup, organic maple syrup, grade A, and I could use that to sweeten my tea because I would have a Ninja hot latte in the morning, and I could sweeten it with maple B, maple syrup, grade A, which has a lot of vitamin B and it has a lot of other nutritional benefits, has a low glycemic index. It still gave me some of the satisfaction of having some of the sweetness without actually having sugar itself. And I was able to get off of sugar remarkably easy. But what was funny, I was in a different environment away from technology because your cell phone doesn't work there. There's no internet, nothing to buy. You're in nature all day. We walked and hiked. I hiked, I think it was like 14 miles, anywhere between 10 and 14 miles a day we hiked in the hot sun, got burned. It was a great experience though. And the thing is, being in a different environment, I think facilitated that, because all the normal patterns that you normally have, when you're in a different environment, you can start changing things up. And when I left those 3 days, I came back to my same old environment and I was able to continue it without any cravings for any sugar. I had no cravings for sugar, any way, shape, or form, which was shocking to me. And then when I would go to the store and I would see, either a Nestle's Crunch bar or a Twix bar, a Kit Kat bar, any of those, which normally would, a Snickers bar that I would have said, what the heck, let me go ahead and get one. I would see it and I would have there was no pull, there was no desire. I didn't long for it. I didn't go, oh gosh, what would it be like to have? No, it was no different than looking at a spatula that was for sale. It had no pull on me whatsoever. And I thought, this is really incredible. But I had reconditioned my brain to a new mind and to a new body. And in the new body, I no longer had that craving for sugar every day. That would go from the morning. It would happen in the morning, and then it would happen again in the evening, sometimes mid-afternoon. Gone. And it just took 3 days. And the same thing is true for you. You can change whatever aspect of it is of yourself by following this protocol. So for example, if you want to become happy, the first step is to stop being unhappy. That is, stop thinking the thoughts that make you unhappy and stop feeling the emotions of the pain, sorrow, and bitterness. If you desire to become wealthy, you'll probably decide to stop doing the things that make you poor. If you want to be healthy, you'll have to stop living an unhealthy lifestyle. These examples are here to show you that first you have to make the decision to stop being the old you, and you want to start becoming the new you to such a degree that you make room for a new personality, thinking, acting, and doing. So again, these examples are to show you that first you have to make the decision to stop being the old you to such a degree that you make room for a new personality, thinking, acting, and doing. So therefore, if you eliminate stimuli from your external world by closing your eyes and becoming quiet, decreasing your sensory input, because that's the benefit. When you first start meditating, you have to first start doing it with your eyes closed so that you start to cut off all the senses, the distractions of what your eyes see, the things that your ears hear, that your nose smells, that your mouth tastes, that your hands feel. Decreasing your sensory input, putting your body in a state of stillness. You can't be moving around. Your whole body has to be still and no longer focusing on linear time. Yes, you will lose sense of time as you become detached from this body and lose your senses. And depending on how you want to look at it, you want to either lose your mind or regain your true mind. You could become aware solely of how you are thinking and feeling. And if you began to pay attention to your unconscious states of mind and body and became familiar with your autonomic and automatic unconscious programs until they became conscious, would you be meditating? The answer is yes. To know thyself is to meditate. Okay, so I've got to stop here right now, because one of the things that as you continue to do this, and we all have to start at the beginning. Every single one of us, no one can get out of this. You all have to start at the beginning. But sorry, I have this, got to make sure that these notifications here are off, because I had this on do not disturb, and then I turned it back on, and I apologize. I forgot to turn it off again in between broadcasts. So as I was saying, make no mistakes. We all have to start meditating at the beginning. Now, many people who go to Dr. Joe's advanced events, and many people who read his books, have meditated before, but there's an equal number of people who never meditated before. I mean, had they picked up the book knowing that meditation was at the heart of the book, I've heard people say this, and that's why I'm going to share this with you. Some of them would have never read the book. If they would have known that, oh, breaking the habit of being yourself had anything to do with meditation, they would have said, no way, I don't want to have anything to do with that. It's not going to happen. Nope. However, many of them found themselves intrigued and riveted and wanting the results and the benefits and the healing and the alchemization of their life experiences, and having the power to alchemize your outcomes and turn the wanted or unwanted into the wanted, that led them to this. And so it doesn't matter if you have 2 decades of meditating, 3 decades, 4 decades, which you could potentially have 2-3 decades of bad habits in meditation, albeit, or you could have no experience and begin now with this. Doesn't matter. You can still gain the results if you just follow the instructions. And the proof is, if you just YouTube Dr. Joe testimonials and you watch one person after another person after another person, you'll see that there's a potpourri of people from young to old, from teenagers to 100-something years old. People who always meditated to never meditated. People with really unhealthy, severe, life-threatening end of the rope, where doctors have said, we've done everything that medical science can do for you. We just can do pain management for you now. To the other end of the spectrum, everything in between. And the ones who have given testimonials are the ones who actually were able to effectuate and to actually alchemize their circumstances and turn an unwanted situation and convert it into a wanted situation of health, of wealth, of good relationship, mending a broken relationship, to, I mean, you name it. There is no limitation. When it comes to this world in which we live, the atoms don't care whether it's a button or a castle, as Abraham says. It doesn't care whether it's money, whether it's health, whether it's happiness. If you want to get rid of depression, if you want to get rid of an addiction, whether you want to buy a house or a car, or change jobs or careers or professions, or turn from being introverted to being an extrovert, to, it doesn't matter. It's all energy. And everything is in potential waveforms of energy until you start to observe it, and then it turns into particles. But it needs you, that focused awareness that's looking into this camera right now, at this screen, exactly what you're doing right now. You just have to do that, do it in meditation, and then focus on what you want. And then you're going to be able to successfully celebrate the accomplishment of getting that you wanted. Okay, so if you are no longer being that old personality, but instead are noticing different aspects of it, wouldn't you agree that you are the consciousness observing the programs of the past identity? In other words, if you consciously observe the old self, you are no longer being it. And that, my friend gems, is an exciting moment. In other words, if you consciously observe the old self, you are no longer being it. because you recognize that you are not it. You are the observer of it. You are the observer. You are the consciousness that witnesses it. That's what Eckhart Tolle was trying to tell us. He wasn't trying to tell us, he told us, but depending on the level of consciousness at which we were when we first read the New Earth book, I don't know how many years ago that was, 15 years ago. And remember, Oprah had her 10-week online largest internet class was at that time through Skype. I did that, by the way. That's what he was trying to tell us. And everyone, I think, who took that, learned it at, the great I am will meet you at wherever it is that you are at in your journey. And this is no different. This is the same thing. This is just a continuation. So as you go from being unaware to being aware, you are beginning to objectify your subjective mind. That is, by your paying attention to the old habit of being you, your conscious participation begins to separate you from those unconscious programs and give you more control over them. Yes, friends and gems, you are going to gain more control through this process. Did you just read and hear what I just said, which is Dr. Joe's words? That is, by your paying attention to the old habit of being you, your conscious participation begins to separate you from those unconscious programs and give you more control over them. So this is fantastic news. If you've been addicted to pain medication, if you've been addicted to the feelings of anger, of doubt, of worry, of depression, of sorrow, if you've been addicted to fighting with your brother, your sister, if you've been addicted to fighting with your spouse or your mother-in-law or father-in-law, or you've been addicted to watching, the news because you like the melodrama that's on the mainstream media news every night. Oh, tune in at 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Pick your poison. It doesn't matter. If you're addicted to gambling, if you're addicted to drinking, if you're addicted to marijuana use, if you're addicted to shopping, if you're addicted to overworking, being a workaholic, if you're addicted to gossiping, if you're addicted to, doesn't matter, addicted to cutting, if you're addicted to, it doesn't really matter what it is. By doing this and becoming aware and learning how to know who you truly are, and now being the observer of those thoughts, you are given more control, which is how you're able to get rid of the addiction. That's why it doesn't make sense from the outside looking in. But once you get into this, you start to realize how much more control you actually have, and you are given more inherent control because you're now stepping in your own power. You are becoming aligned with the true you who you've always been. And you're starting to get heart and brain coherence. Now things are starting to wire and fire in your favor, which increases the amount of control you have, increases the likelihood of your success. It's that conscious awareness. By the way, if you are successful in consciously restraining those routine states, pay attention, he says, they're routine states. That doesn't mean that's you, but it is a routine. It is a habit, the habituation of being a certain way by thinking in a certain manner. So restraining those routine states of mind and body, because the two are not one and the same, they're two separate things, oftentimes, but not necessarily going hand in hand, then nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together. As you prune away the neurological hardware of the old self, you also no longer signal the same genes in identical ways. You are breaking the habit of being you. So you are creating new neurological pathways in your brain. You're going to create new wiring and firing and breaking the habit of being your old self. that make sense? Contemplate a new, greater expression of self. So now let's take it one step further. Aren't you curious what he's going to say next? I am, and I've read the book already. So once you have become familiar with the old self to the extent that no thought, no behavior, and no feeling will cause you to fall unconsciously into previous patterns, you might agree that it would be a good idea to begin to become familiar with a new self. Accordingly, you may ask yourself, what is a greater expression of myself that I would like to be? I want you to contemplate that for a moment. What is a greater expression of myself that I would like to be? What is a greater expression? Do you want to, maybe you've never played a musical instrument before, and maybe a greater expression of yourself would be to play the piano or the guitar or the flute, or maybe some other instrument, maybe the drums, maybe to begin singing, maybe to start doing art, maybe to draw, maybe to sculpt, maybe to start designing homes. Maybe you've always had a thing for beautiful architecture. Maybe you start to draw and design homes, or to draw and design cars, or draw and design bicycles, or airplanes, or windsurfer sails, or parasails, or kite surfing sails, or paddle boards, or neoprene wetsuits. I mean, the sky's the limit. You get to pick. Maybe you'll start designing shoes. Maybe you've always loved shoes. Maybe you have a certain amount of creativity and you thought, you know what, I always wanted a shoe that kind of looked like this. Maybe you have a hidden shoe designer in you. What is a greater expression of myself that I would like to be? Maybe you've always done fairly well, but now you would like to do extraordinarily well. And maybe you're now deciding, you know what, I actually want to be wealthy. I want to hit the 7-figure mark. I want to have a net worth of 7 figures or more. Why not? That is part of that. You have a physical body so that you can have a 3D experience, and that's part of the 3D experience. All money is energy. It's just stored energy. That's it. You can have anything that your heart's desire. You just have to choose it so that you can focus on it, and then you can create it. So if you turn on your frontal lobe and contemplate those aspects of self, you will begin to make your brain work differently than your past self. As your frontal lobe is the CEO, entertains that new question, it looks out over the landscape of the rest of the brain and seamlessly combines all of your stored knowledge and experiences into a new model of thought. So it helps create an internal representation for you to begin to focus on. So this contemplation, this process builds new neurological networks as you ponder the fundamental question above. Your neurons will begin to fire and wire in new sequences and patterns and combinations because you are thinking differently. And I hit the pause button here because you are now not focusing on the problem. Focusing on the problem just makes the problem grow, because you can't come up with a solution from the frequency that created the problem. You have to get out of the frequency that created that problem. You need to take a step back, say, okay, this is the problem. Okay, what would it look like if I had solved this challenge? And you need to be in a different frequency, in a different state in order to create the solution. And make no mistakes, if you have a problem, if you have a challenge, if you have an obstacle, there's always multiple solutions. I'm going to say that there's a minimum of 3 or more that are available to you, but you need to get into the right frequency. So one of the things that I'm sure you've heard others say, and now I'm really hoping for you that you're going to hear it with different ears. But you have to ask yourself. Part of this, it's like a meditation when you're asking yourself an effective question, focusing on what you're doing wrong in the face of something unwanted. What am I doing wrong? 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 Is going to keep you stuck on that record of what am I doing wrong? 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 You'll never find a solution there, ever, because you're focused on what you're doing wrong, which is going to make you do more things wrong, including that action of focusing on what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? If instead you're like, okay, I don't like these results. How, what would I need to do to succeed? You know, if I want to be a very accomplished writer, what would that look like? What would it feel like to be an accomplished writer, to be a New York Times bestseller? Oh, I'm sure if I was a New York Times bestseller, I wouldn't have writer's block. I would be tuning in to that thread of inspiration from the ethers. Somehow I would be at a vibrational frequency where I could receive this inspiration. I would have all these cool ideas. My imagination would explode with all sorts of fun and wondrous things. And I would just try to keep up to jot them down on paper so I could document them all, so I could remember them, so I could use them in whatever it is that I'm writing. And it would feel so good to get that expression out from thought form and put it into my computer, type it out, or to write it on a physical piece of paper. You know, maybe your thing is to write everything down. Maybe it isn't. Maybe instead it's better to do your fingers, let your fingers do the writing by doing the typing on your computer. Either way, but to feel, oh my gosh, and if that were the case, then I could easily write a book. And if I could easily write a book, can you imagine? Now you're looking at, it's like, what would I need to do in order to write a book and then have it published? And oh my gosh, what would it feel like to have people read the book and be enthralled and intrigued with the book and be so mesmerized by it that they would not stop at reading the book, but they would talk about it to all their friends and family and start to even buy copies and share it with others. And that's probably what it would be like to be a New York Times best-selling author. And oh my gosh, if that were to happen, I would imagine that there probably would be a podcast, a vlog, quite a few YouTube channels, probably a lot of FB Lives, a lot of Instagram TVs, a lot of different other social media outlets that would probably want to interview me. And you keep on going. And what would, gosh, what would I write about? And then you start to answer, you start to get inspiration as to what it is that you would do in order to become that successful writer. It could be anything. Maybe you want to become a doctor, a naturopathic doctor, or perhaps you want to be the most prolific architect. Maybe you've never done architecture before, but you thought, you know what? I've been doing civil engineering for this amount of time, and it's like it was great for a while, but now I'm just bored with it and I want to do something new. And I've always had some sort of intrigue with architecture. Oh my gosh, what would it be like for me to be a famous and well accomplished, and what kind of structure would I build? And just let your imagination go. That could be the genesis of the beginning of the rest of your life. And you can create something new from that place. All the same, you could be somebody who was extremely heavy. Maybe you know that you're 50 or 100 pounds overweight, and you've been lugging around this extra flesh and bone baggage for way too long. And you're like, you know what? 2020 is the year I can see things crystal clear. This is the year that I'm going to get fit. And what would it be like? Well, I would feel stronger. I would feel leaner. I would feel like I'd have better posture. I would feel more energized. I would look and feel younger. You guys get the picture. That is the mindset that you use to solve a problem. That is the mindset that you use to get yourself unstuck. I don't care if it's a relationship, financial jam, job conflict, transformation, whatever the issue is, it's the same type of thinking. You ask yourself effective questions and you apply these meditative practices to create new sequence patterns and combinations because you are thinking differently. And now your neurons are going to wire and fire in a new way. It's not going through the old grooves of your old thinking. It's now wiring and firing new pathways of the brain. Whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind. But it's you that are doing it. Nobody else is doing it for you. No one's coming in to rescue you. You're rescuing yourself. As you plan your actions, speculate on novel possibilities. Conjure up innovative ways of being and dreaming of new states of mind and body. And it's a comma here in the book, but I'm going to put a period here for a pause, because nobody is telling you that you have to be reasonable. Nobody is telling you that it has to be within the realm of possibility and reality. The sky is the limit. Give yourself permission to come up with the most outlandish, wackiest, far-fetched, imaginative things that you can come up with. It's just you and you. Nobody's going to know. I don't know why so many of us have been afraid to give ourselves permission to just let go and just be. That is the fabric of all greatness in this universe. Einstein himself said it, that far greater than intelligence, that imagination is infinitely more valuable than intelligence. It was through imagination that he came up with E equals MC squared. Did you know that? It wasn't an intellectual, analytical, critical thinking mind that brought the solution and the realization that E equals MC squared. It was imagination. Make no mistakes. The genius of Leonardo da Vinci was from that thought plane of imagination where there was nothing to confine him, whether the confines were not limiting him in art or in science or in medicine or any of his endeavors, any of his inventions. So it's imagination. Imagination. I don't know if you recognize in the word imagination, we keep on talking about the power of words. In the word imagination, magic nation, to do. That means that you are magically, you're magnifying, and then you're creating an action that's birthed from that magical, magnificent plane of existence. That's imagine. It's imagine, like a mind magic engine. Okay. So we left off here. Of new states of mind and body, there will be a moment that the frontal lobe will turn on and lower the volume to the big three. Okay. This is where my background here and some of the neurosciences, I see this and I got to point it out to you guys because nobody points it out. He says here, and I want you to unpack this because if you just read it, you're going to miss it. Somebody has to point it out to you. So I'm here to point it out to you. There will be a moment that the frontal lobe will turn on. Now he's saying that it will turn on because if you were to look at your brain, if you actually had an electroencephalogram put on your brain and you had neuroscientists that were actually looking at your brain scans, they would see that your brain is literally, the photons and the neural activity would actually light up like a Christmas tree, especially on the front part of your brain. They literally light up. But what he goes on to say here, there's another secret here. Frontal lobe will turn on and lower the volume to the big three. Make no mistakes. I'm going to sound like a scratch record, but I know we have to do repetition so that you guys don't have to memorize it. You'll learn it, and through constant hearing it, you will absorb it, and so it'll be effortless for you. But there are 8 somatic sensory systems of the body. Lower the volume. Your auditory sensory somatic system of the body. There's the 8 eyes, vision, olfactory, gustatory, auditory, tactile, sensory, kinesthetic. There's interoceptive, nociceptive, and proprioceptive. This one is appealing to the auditory somatic sensory system. As you're moving in life and your brain is experiencing all that you experience, through a sense of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, not only feeling tactile with your hands and your skin. Your skin also has a proprioceptor system, which it can judge without you actually having to look with your eyes. It inherently can sense the distance between you and the wall, which is why you don't bounce into the wall. On the flip side, for example, people who suffer from different forms of autism, they actually do bump into walls. They bump into things where you're like, how did they bump into that desk? It almost looks like they went out of their way to bump into the desk. No, it's their proprioceptive system is a little off whack, which is why they can't keep themselves from bouncing off of a wall or bouncing off of a desk, or, you know, if they're driving, they could bounce off of other cars and cause car accidents. And so your body is storing information using sound. That is why when we do the neuro health reset, which is not something that Dr. Joe teaches, but it's one of the freebies that I actually throw out there. I've been throwing out the neuro health reset a lot more to help people relieve themselves of pain in less than 3 minutes. You're going to be using your 8 sensory systems. They're neurosomatic sensory systems of the body. And in less than 3 minutes, if you can point to pain anywhere in your body, you can get rid of it. Here he's telling you it's an acknowledgement of that. There will be a moment that the frontal lobe will turn on and it lowers the volume to the big 3. When this happens, the thought you are thinking will become an internal experience. You will install new software and hardware programs into your nervous system, and it will appear that the experience of being your new self has already been realized in your brain, because the new self, the volume is being turned up. So it's a louder sounding you, and the old you, the volume's being turned down. The visual inside your mind of the old you, because you're not using that familiar firing and wiring of your brain, the image is dimmer, darker in your brain's memory. Now the picture of the new you, of whatever the new you is, maybe you've had a drinking problem, maybe you were an alcoholic, and the new you isn't an alcoholic anymore. So the picture of you being happy, healthy, and wealthy, and no longer addicted, that alcohol doesn't have, you're not a slave to it anymore. So you don't have the compulsion to have it any longer. You are now standing in your own power. That image in your mind's eye is a brighter image, and the sound of you speaking, being, doing, having is a louder, brighter picture than the old self was. Okay? And if you repeat this process every day, your ideal will become a familiar state of mind. The more you hold the image of the wanted, your Dr. Joe talks about drawing a new map to your future self. So now you're going to recall that future. It's a future memory, but it's not a memory of the past. It's a memory that you've casted forward, and you're going to treat it as if it's in the past. Because so long as you treat it as it's in the past, your brain will think it's in the past, and then that becomes the new you. In a sense, you can quantum jump into that new expression, the new reality of who you truly are. One more point here. If you attend so well to the thought you are focusing on that, it literally becomes an experience, then the end product of this is an emotion. Once that emotion is created, you begin to feel like your new ideal, and that new feeling will start to become familiar. Remember that when your body begins to respond as if the experience is already a present reality, you will signal your genes in new ways, and your body will commence to change now, ahead of the physical event in your life. Now you are ahead of time. Now you are ahead of time. And the most important, you move into a state of being, mind and body working together. And if you repeat this process consistently, this state of being will become familiar to you as well. Now, this is the type of familiar you want to become familiar with. You want this thing to be your new personal reality, to create your own personal, not only your personal reality, but your new personality. So that is now what you have crafted to be your new familiar state of being. So if you can maintain that modified state of mind and body, independent of the external environment and the body's emotional needs and greater than time, something should show up differently in your world. That is quantum law. Did you hear what Dr. Joe just said? He said, that's quantum law. It's not a crapshoot. It's not an airy-fairy thing. It's not happenstance. It's not a shot in the dark. It's not a maybe. It's not, it only works with people whose first name starts with the letter L. It's not just for people who live in the United States. It's not just for people who have dark eyebrows. No, it's quantum law. If it's law, that means that no matter what, you can take it to the bank. That is good news. The reality is you guys are doing all of this already. You're just doing it with the wrong emotions backwards. That's all. So now you're coming into the awareness. As I speak these words and as you become aware of what it is that I'm telling you, and as you are listening to the words that Dr. Joe is now sharing here with you, the wisdom, the knowledge that he's accumulated over his entire lifetime, you're starting to realize and understand this truth. There's someplace deep inside you where this resonates, and you're like, somehow I kind of feel like I know this already. There's some aspect of it where it just rings true, and you're understanding and realizing, you're noticing that, yes, this is, yeah, somewhere, somehow I lost this, and I can do this. I can do this, and I've done this, and now I just have to, it's a tiny little tweak. Most of you just have a tiny little tweak. That tiny little tweak can make massive differences in your life. You can go from having an absolute swimmy life to having a fantastic life. And most people think, oh, I have to make such a massive, painful change that it's just not going to happen. I just don't have the wherewithal. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time. I don't have the desire. I don't have the willpower. I don't, blah, blah, blah. What if it was just a tiny little tweak in the way you're thinking and perceiving things? Just a tiny little tweak that would make all the difference in the world. You know, when they launch a rocket ship from Earth, they have very precise calculations to launch a rocket from Earth from point A. If we want to land on the moon at point B, you have to have surgically precise calculations so that that rocket ship ends up at point B. If they so much as make a little shift in those calculations, and it's not surgically precise, by the time they reach the moon, they won't reach the moon. They'll completely miss the moon. Not only will they not land on the right place that they're supposed to land on the moon, they'll miss the planet altogether. And it's just a tiny little deviation. Just like this. From Earth, when you first leave, it won't be noticeable. As you continue to travel throughout space, that little deviation becomes more and more magnified, more and more magnified. And by the time they get up into where they're supposed to be on the moon, not only will they miss the moon, they're gonna miss all the planets in between, and now they're off on who knows where. The same thing is true for you and for me. We just have to make a little adjustment. So I encourage you, keep on reading, keep on reviewing, keep on applying this. That's what we're here for. Don't you love YouTube? You can play this over and over and over again. You can read this consciously right now. Then before you go to bed, you can put your earphones on and play it again. Then tomorrow you can open up your book And oh, one thing I've been forgetting to mention to all of you guys at the beginning of each one of these broadcasts, I'm going to have to put something in the description. If you go to the bottom right-hand side of this YouTube channel and you click the little CC that is at the bottom of the settings for YouTube, that'll bring the text up so that you can read it at the same time that you're watching this video, okay? But I encourage you to get your own book, both the paperback book and the electronic Kindle form, because you're going to want to have, again, I'm all about the 8 somatic sensory systems of the body. You want to maximize your ability to retain and apply this information. The more kinesthetic you can be, where you're engaging your visual, sensory system, your auditory, that's what this YouTube channel is doing. By playing the audio in the Kindle book, it's auditory again. You're smelling the paper, because there's a distinct smell to the paper of the book as opposed to the Kindle, unless you have, I guess, a leather cover on it, then possibly. You're not using your gustatory in this particular case, but you want to appeal to as many of the 8 neurosomatic sensory systems of the body so that you can absorb this information. And you want to be exposed to this information more than once. So I encourage you to watch these videos over and over and over again, and then take time to read along with your book as you're listening to the video. So here we go. Independent of the external environment and the body's emotional needs and greater than time, something should show up differently in your world. That's quantum law. That's such great news. Let's summarize here. According to our working model of meditation, all you have to do is remind yourself who you no longer want to be, until this becomes so familiar that you know your old self, the thoughts, behaviors, and emotions connected to the old you that you want to change. To the extent that you unfire and unwire the old mind away and no longer signal the same genes in the same ways, then you repeatedly contemplate who you do want to be. As a result, you will fire and wire new levels of the mind to which you will emotionally condition the body until they become familiar and second nature to you. Now, that's change. So I want to point out to you, there's a guy named Aaron Doughty who is on YouTube. He has a fantastic channel. I highly encourage you to check him out. But one of the things that, and he has also been a student of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And when he was growing up, he was ADHD. He had a form of ADHD, and he had to be on Ritalin, and he came from a very narcissistic and abusive household where his stepmother was extremely abusive to him and to his brother. And, you know, that coupled with his ADHD and being on Ritalin, and he had a lot of, as you can imagine, he had a lot of challenges. But he wanted to grow out of, and he wanted to become the new him. And so he drew a line in the sand, and he just decided, you know what, I don't know how, I don't know where all the answers are, but I am going to overcome myself, and I am going to be greater than this ADHD. And I don't like the way this Ritalin makes me feel, and I'm going to get rid of this, even though he was told he had to take the Ritalin for life. He decided, no, that's not acceptable. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to figure a way out. He found Dr. Joe's work, and he started to work on himself, and he started his practice of meditation. He has some great meditations, by the way. I encourage you to check them out if you don't know of him, Aaron Doughty. And he successfully reinvented himself. And there came a point in time where he decided, you know, he was selling shoes at Barney's, I believe it was at Barney's shoe store. And he decided he wanted to be more than just a Barney's shoeman, you know, shoe salesman. And he was able to create the new him. Now he's a successful YouTuber, but he speaks very specifically how in meditation he had to let go of the identity of, he could no longer tell himself, I have ADHD, I take Ritalin. No, because in his mind, the new Aaron didn't have ADHD and did not take Ritalin, and he was no longer a shoe salesman. He was a successful YouTuber. And now he's a very successful YouTuber that has lived all over the world and has an incredible following and has done some amazing things, has wonderful meditations. If you don't know who he is, check him out. But he had to condition the body to a new mind, like Dr. Joe is talking about. So my point in sharing Aaron's story with you, and I hope that you listen to his YouTube videos and channel so that you hear it directly from him, because I'm giving you the very short abridged version. But there is a possibility for you to become the new you. And I don't care how old you are. You might be 12 years old watching this, or you could be 92 years old. Yeah, make no mistakes. A 92-year-old can change. I've seen people in their 80s go back to college and graduate and get their bachelor's in their 80s. I've met a 92-year-old who had a 30-year plan. A 30-year plan and they're 92 years old. It's all possible. It's all up to you. It really is all up to you. So a second definition of meditation. Did you know that there's more than one definition of meditation? Well, now you do, and it's in the book, documented there for you to check, review, and apply. So a second definition of meditation, cultivating self. Besides its meaning in Tibetan, to meditate, in Sanskrit means to cultivate self. I like the way that feels. To cultivate self. Kind of reminds me of like when you cultivate a beautiful flower. Maybe you have beautiful flowers that are planted in your garden and you see the beautiful flowers and maybe you're pruning and cutting. Maybe you're taking some cuttings of flowers to put inside your house and then you're pruning and fertilizing that flower or bush, or maybe you're instructing your landscaper or gardener to cultivate that so that you continue enjoying the beauty of all these flowers in your garden. And that's what you're doing. You're cultivating the seeds and the plants and the trees that are growing fruit inside your mind in quantum. So to cultivate self, it feels good to me. So I especially like this definition because of the metaphorical possibilities it offers. For example, gardening or agriculture. When you cultivate the soil, you take the packed down earth that has been lying fallow for a while and you churn it up with a spade or other implement. You expose new dirt and nutrients, making it easier for seeds to germinate and for tender shoots to take root. Cultivation may also require you to remove plants from the previous season, attend to weeds that went unnoticed, and remove any rocks that rose to the surface by natural shifting. Thus, last season's plants might represent your past creations derived from the thoughts, actions, and emotions that define the old familiar you. Weeds could signify long-standing attitudes, beliefs, or perceptions about yourself that are subconsciously undermining your efforts, which you hadn't noticed because you were too distracted by other things. So let's read this again, because I think sometimes we read these things and we don't really understand, or it doesn't sink in. How does this apply in our real lives, for you and for me? So weeds could signify longstanding attitudes, beliefs, or perceptions about yourself that are subconsciously undermining your efforts, which you hadn't noticed because you were too distracted by other things. Well, if there has been any time in history to be distracted with things going on outside of us, I would say that now would be that time. The truth of the matter is we are never going to find a place and time where we're going to live on this earth where all the external environment is going to be completely at peace. That being said, you could still retain peace in your inner being and still feel peaceful despite whatever else is going on the outside. So you could have the long-standing attitude that you never get sick. And if you have the long-standing attitude, which is a long-standing attitude that serves you, that actually happens to be one of my beliefs because it's true. I never get sick. So it's almost like the chicken or the egg. Do I never get sick because I think I never get sick? Or is it because I never get sick that I think I never get sick? I don't know. I just know that I've always had the thought and the belief system, and my kids do too. And so it's true for them as well, that I don't ever get sick, they never get sick, and we don't catch things easily. Even if somebody, when I was married, my husband would catch the flu, and I didn't have any issues still kissing him when he had the flu because I knew I wasn't going to get it even by kissing him. Whereas, for him, if I happened to have something, he would catch it because I don't know, I guess his thought and his system was different. But the bottom line is I remember I had a friend who actually told me, he said, oh, it's funny that this was in business years ago, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, where this guy, Tom, told me that a former boss that he goes, his boss decided he was never getting sick again. And from the day that he decided he was never getting sick again, he never had a cold, he never had an allergy, he never got sick. And he would tell his employees, Tom included, he goes, I just don't get sick. I don't get sick. I never get sick. It's not possible for me to get sick. And so he never got sick. So the question here is, weeds could signify longstanding attitudes, beliefs, or perceptions about yourself that are subconsciously undermining your efforts. If you're thinking, oh, I might get sick. Oh, I might catch this, that, or whatnot. Oh, maybe just a little tiny sniffle of your nose, or, oh, actually, this is a really good one. So many people have the weeds and longstanding attitudes that if you begin to start to get a sore throat, if you start to get a runny nose, if you begin to have a little bit of a headache, if your body starts to feel a little weak, any of those symptoms, I'm getting sick. That's literally what they will verbalize. They'll think it and they actually verbalize, I'm getting sick. And if you're thinking, I'm getting sick, you're thinking it and you're saying it, well, your brain is an order-taking mechanism. Okay, she's saying we're getting sick, so I guess let's go in this direction. So now it's going to give in to that. If instead you go, oh, it looks like there's something kind of going on here, I got to nip this in the bud. So the moment you feel a little runny nose, you feel just the exact same symptoms, and you go, oh, this just means I need more water, I need more rest, and I need an extra dose of vitamin C so I can kick this out. This is just letting me know that I've come in contact with something that is not agreeable. So you drink extra water, you hydrate yourself, you take extra vitamin C, and you get some maybe an extra hour or two of sleep. You knock it out the next day, you're 100% fine again. Guess what? You never got sick. Your body was fighting something that it came in contact with, and your immune system won. You gave it a little extra assistance with hydrating it a little better. You gave it, extra water. You gave it extra vitamin C, and you gave it some extra rest. And, that little bit of a headache that your body is an indicator that something's a little off in your body, knocked out. You're easy peasy and you're totally fine. You didn't have to succumb to getting sick. Two different attitudes, two same symptoms, and two radically different outcomes. One wanted and the other one unwanted. You get to pick. So weeds could signify longstanding attitudes, beliefs, or perceptions about yourself that are subconsciously undermining your efforts, which you hadn't noticed because you were too distracted by other things. And the rocks can symbolize your many layers of personal blocks and limitations, which naturally rise to the surface over time and block your growth. All these need tending to so you can make room to plant a new garden in your mind. Otherwise, if you planted a new garden or crop without proper preparation, it would yield little fruit. Who wants a tree with no fruit if it can bear fruit? I don't know about you, but I absolutely adore to have fruit trees. So my hope is that you understand by now that it is impossible to create any new future when you are rooted in your past. You have to clear away the old vestiges of the garden all the crappy stuff that's in the garden of your mind that doesn't serve you, you got to start clearing it out, hacking it out before you can cultivate a new self by planting the seeds of new thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that create new life. The other key thing is to ensure that this doesn't happen haphazardly. We're not talking about plants in the wild, which scatter seeds roughshod over the ground with some tiny percentage of them eventually coming to fruition. Instead, to cultivate requires making conscious decisions when to till the soil, when to plant, what to plant, how each of the items planted will work in harmony with others, how much water and fertilizer to mix in, and so on and so forth. Planning and preparation are essential to the success of this endeavor. This requires our daily mindful attention. Similarly, when we talk about someone cultivating an interest in a particular subject, we mean that he has thoughtfully researched that area of interest. Also, a cultivated person is someone who has carefully chosen what to expose herself to and who has amassed a breadth of knowledge and experience. Again, none of this is done on a whim and left, and little is left to chance. When you cultivate anything, you are seeking to be in control. And that's what is required when you change any part of yourself. Instead of allowing things to develop naturally, you intervene and consciously take steps to reduce the likelihood of failure. The purpose behind all of this effort is to reap a harvest. When you cultivate a new personality in meditation, the abundant yield you seek to create is a new reality. So, creating a new mind is like cultivating a garden. The manifestations you produce from the garden of your mind will be just like crops from the earth's soil. Tend well. So, the meditative process for change. Before we go on to this next section that's called the meditative process for change, I wanted to interject just a couple things because I know that for some people, when they first start the process of meditation, it's for some people it's difficult to remember to meditate every day or to just force themselves to sit down and meditate. And some people think that meditating is always done in like complete quietness. The truth of the matter is that there, Dr. Joe talks about how there's many, many different forms of meditation. And yes, some forms of meditation, you're just completely quiet, alone, just you and your own thoughts, and perhaps with your eyes closed, or you might just be staring at a flame in a candle. It could be a flame in a fireplace or a fire pit. Um, Again, it takes all sorts of different forms. You could even be staring at the veins in your hand, the lines of your hand or the veins of your hand, and that in and of itself is a meditation as well. But there are other meditations which are guided meditations. And so I think for a lot of people, when you first start meditating, I think it's much easier to start with a guided meditation because it's leading your attention and it's having you follow certain steps so that you have a certain outcome. The other thing I'm going to say is that, only you know you. Some people are very disciplined about certain things and other people are less disciplined. And, maybe part of the creating the new you is maybe creating a more disciplined you. But the truth of the matter is that everybody that's watching this, we all brush our teeth every day. And we don't have to remember to brush your teeth. You just wake up, you got to go brush your teeth. And this is no different. But it could be that at the beginning, you might need just a little a little extra, not just encouragement, but maybe you want to set yourself up for success so you have a greater chance of success. So you may have a best friend, maybe your BFF, your best friend forever. Maybe you and that person will decide, okay, we both are new to meditating and we both want to get this done. So we're going to go on Zoom every day at X time. And when we first wake up, we're going to do this, or right before we go to sleep, every night at 11 o'clock at night or whatever time. You pick your time. It's your life. You do it as you choose. I'm going to encourage you to do it twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, because like bookends, you want to begin your day when you are first waking up. You're still in theta state already. So take advantage of those brain waves that are already primed in theta state. And then at the end of the day, as you're getting ready to go to sleep, same thing. You want to take advantage of the fact that you're getting ready to go to sleep. The melatonin is at its highest level, and you can slip into 5D quantum realm a lot easier. But you can set up an accountability partner. And if you can't find a best friend or a close friend, then you could find someone on Dr. Joe's study groups, on the online community. And the other thing is, you could start your own Zoom group. You could do Zoom. I have a professional Zoom account, but you can do a free Zoom account. You can do 40 minutes on Zoom, and you can just find volunteers in Dr. Joe's groups and ask, hey, who'd be interested in, every night at X time, or every morning or every day, and create your own group where, as you guys come together to do this, you can buy one of Dr. Joe's meditations. Blessing of the Energy Centers 1. Start with Botech. I would encourage you guys even to start before even Botech. I would encourage you to do Blessing of the Energy Centers. Actually, no, I would encourage you to buy Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. It comes with 2 meditations. So then you get the rising water meditation and the body parts meditation. Those are 2 phenomenal, one of my favorite meditations, because there's an automatic, the process that he takes you as you're isolating your body parts, whether you're doing the body parts meditation or the water rising, because you're feeling your different body parts as the water is rising up. It's making you isolate your awareness to that sensation in that part of the body, inside the body and outside of the body, and then the space around the body. That creates an automatic induction field, which fans out your electromagnetic field. And of course, you're also going to have heart and brain coherence, but the focus of those are induction, which it's so important, because too many of us have been in more material where we don't have enough light. The photons are not all firing and wiring inside of our bodies, so there's darkness, and our bodies are dense. So you want the energy to be flowing throughout your body. So you want to fan out your electromagnetic frequency. You want to fan out your torus field. You want it to be as far out from your body as possible, so you're as light, not only in weight, but also in terms of actual light, as opposed to darkness. That type of light as well, because that's an optimal state of being in order for you to heal your body and for you to manifest. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next section. Are you ready? I hope so. The meditative process for change. Move from unconscious to the conscious. So to sum up the meditative process, you have to break the habit of being yourself and reinvent a new self. Lose your mind and create a new one. Prune synaptic connections and nurture new ones. Unmemorize past emotions and recondition the body to a new mind and emotions. And let go of the past and create a new future. So in figure 8A, the biological model of change involves transforming the familiar past to a new future. So let's look a bit more closely at a few elements of this process. Now, obviously, to avoid letting any thought or feeling you don't want to experience get past you unchecked, you have to develop powerful skills of observation and focus. We humans have a limited ability to focus and to absorb input, but we can be much better at it than we normally are in our more unconscious state. So to break the habit of being yourself, you would be wise to select one trait, propensity, or characteristic and focus your attention on that single aspect of your old self that you want to change. So for example, you might begin by asking yourself, when I feel angry, what are my thought patterns? What do I say to others and myself, how do I act? What other emotions spring forth from my being angry? What other emotions spring forth from my being angry? What does anger feel like in my body? How can I become conscious of what triggers my anger? And how can I change my reaction? So I'm going to be very candid and very vulnerable with you all. And I'm going to share with you things that I realized as I observed and started to ask myself some of these questions. For example, one of the questions here is, what other emotions spring forth from my being angry? I recognized that in my feelings of being angry, I was being angry in response to being hurt or injured by another being. So that feeling of anger was really my feeling pain. And when I recognized that the reason why I was so angry was because I was feeling so much pain. So what does that anger feel like in my body? Well, your body feels clenched, or maybe you don't know. But for me, it felt, it's like, you can't be relaxed. And so as you take lock and stock and you're taking note of, okay, what are the different layers to whatever emotion it is that I'm feeling? Then you can start to release that. And then you can start to unpack those emotions and not have them be still lodged in your body. They can start to, you literally start to let go of them. And then you can actually start visualizing where it is in your body that you feel, the tension and the clenching. For some people, their stomach gets all wadded up into a knot. So then that can start to dissolve. The energy can literally start to dissipate. The process of change requires unlearning first, then learning. The latter is a function of firing and wiring in the brain, and the former means that circuits are trimmed. When you stop thinking the same way, when you inhibit your habituations and interrupt those emotional addictions, the old self begins to be neurologically pruned away. And if every connection between nerve cells constitutes a memory, then as those circuits are dismantled, memories of your old self will go with them. Did you hear that? And if every connection between nerve cells constitutes a memory, then as those circuits are dismantled, memories of yourself, of your old self, will go with them. That's good news. When you think about your former life and who you used to be, it will be like another lifetime. Where are those memories now stored? They will be given to the soul as wisdom. So, my friends and gems, newsflash, those old memories, you can be the alchemist and you can transmute that energy from pain, anger, and suffering into wisdom. And you don't have to repeat that karmic pattern any longer in your life. I don't know if anybody has ever told you that before, but it doesn't matter because you're being told now that you can take those memories and transmute them. Napoleon Hill talked about the transmutation of energy. And that's what he means, to transmute this energy. Paul Coelho, in his book, The Alchemist, he talks about the alchemy of life and how you can turn a base metal into gold. A base metal, anger. You can turn it into gold by converting it into wisdom. It's not a lesson that you have to repeat over and over again to a higher degree, with more pain, with more suffering, because you didn't learn it previously. Now that you are aware, you can transmute that energy. And now your brain is going to wire new synaptic nerve connections. And now you can let it go. And that now is a memory without a charge. And it's a wisdom that no one can ever take away from you. I say you can take that wisdom, and now it's a jewel. You can put it in your crown. Because as the queen, I'm collecting jewels for my crown. And that's how I decorate my crown. It's with wisdom. And if you're a man, king. So when those thoughts and feelings that used to signal the body are stopped by your conscious efforts, the liberated energy from those limited emotions is released into the field. You now have the energy with which to design and create a new destiny. When we use meditation as a means to change, when we become conscious and aware, familiar with the willing, and to do what is necessary to eradicate an undesirable trait and cultivate a desired one, we're doing what mystics have been doing for centuries. So although I take a clearly biological approach to change, so did the mystics. They just use different terminology to describe the process, and the end result is the same: breaking the addiction to the body, the environment, and time. Only when we make the separation can we change. Only when we think greater than the big three can we truly live independent of them and reestablish dominion and how we think and feel on a daily basis. So for too long, we've been running unconscious programs that have been controlling us. Pause right here. How many of you walk around, figuratively speaking, you don't literally walk around like this, but how many of you may as well walk around like this because you're unable to express your emotions? You can't talk. You just can't seem to bring yourself to express the emotions of sadness, the emotion of maybe guilt, of shame, maybe of being let down, of being betrayed, or of being in love, or caring, or what have you. That's really being, you're jailed inside of you, and you may as well have a gag at your throat, which is a super. So many of us live lives, what is it, Henry David Thoreau, who said, men leading lives of quiet desperation, which is not living. You're alive, but you're not really fully alive unless you're able to fully embrace all of your emotions and fully express them and figure out a way. And sometimes it's hard to speak words, so perhaps you might need to write them down, or you might need to sing them. That's why a lot of musicians can't just speak them unless it's with music. And with music, then they're able to fully express, but in just the plain spoken word, but they are expressing it no less. So we all have to find our way and figure out how to stand in our own power. And we have to acknowledge and embrace all of our emotions, not just the happy, joyous ones, but also the sad ones, because all of it is biofeedback. All of it is important. All of it is relevant. It's all trying to communicate something to you. It is your organ systems of the body interpreting vibrational frequencies and giving you a certain feedback so that you pay attention in either direction. And so this is really important stuff. Very important stuff. Probably the most important work you will ever do in your life is this self-mastery and learning to reconcile all of this within your inner being. So for too long, we've been running unconscious programs that have been controlling us. Meditation allows us to reassert control. Awareness comes first, recognizing when and how those programmed responses take over is essential. When you move from the unconscious to the conscious, you begin to close the gap between how you appear and who you really are. So the waves of your future, since knowledge is, as we've seen, the precursor to experience, having a basic understanding of what happens in the brain during meditation will serve you well when you begin to learn and experience the meditative process coming up shortly in part 3. You probably know that the brain is electrochemical in nature, and when nerve cells fire, they exchange charged elements that then produce electromagnetic fields. Because the brain's diverse electrical activity can be measured, these effects can provide important information about what we're thinking and feeling, learning, dreaming, and creating, and how we are processing information. So the most common technological scientists the most common technology scientists use to record the brain's changing electrical activity is an electroencephalogram. It's also called an EEG. Research has discovered a wide scope of brainwave frequencies in humans, ranging from the very low levels of activity found in delta, like delta sleep waves, to a twilight state between sleep and wakefulness called theta, to the creative, imaginative, alpha, to high frequencies seen during conscious thought called beta waves, to the highest frequencies recorded called gamma waves, seen in elevated states of consciousness. So, to help you better understand your journey into meditation, I'm going to give you an overview of how each of these states relates to you. So once you know what all of these domains are, you will be more adept at knowing when you are in the brainwave state where the ego tries in vain to change the ego. God knows I've been there. And when you are in the brainwave state that is the fertile ground of true change. So as children grow, the frequencies that predominate, their brains progress from delta to theta to alpha and then to beta. Our job in meditation is to become like a child, moving from beta to alpha to theta. For the adept or the mystic, delta. So understanding the progression of brainwave changes during human development can help demystify the process of how we experience meditation. Brainwave development in children from subconscious to conscious mind, delta. Between birth and 2 years of age, the human brain functions primarily in the lowest brainwave levels from zero point 0.5 to 4 cycles per second. Now, this range of electromagnetic activity is known as delta waves. Adults in deep sleep are in delta. This explains why a newborn usually can't remain awake for more than a few minutes at a time, and why, even with their eyes open, young babies can be asleep. When 1-year-olds are awake, they're still primarily in delta because they function principally from their subconscious. So information from the outside world enters their brains with little editing, critical thinking, or judgment taking place. The thinking brain, the neocortex, or conscious mind is operating at very low levels at this point. Now, theta, from about ages 2 to 5 or 6 years of age, a child begins to demonstrate slightly higher EEG patterns. And these theta wave frequencies measure 4 to 8 cycles per second. Children functioning in theta tend to be trance-like and primarily connected to their internal world. They live in the abstract and in the realm of imagination and exhibit few of the nuances of critical, rational thinking. Thus, young children are likely to accept what you tell them. P.S. Santa is real. At this stage, phrases such as the following have a huge impact. Big boys don't cry. Girls should be seen and not heard. Your sister is smarter than you. If you get cold, you'll catch a cold. These types of statements go straight to the subconscious mind because these slow brainwave states are the realm of the subconscious mind. Hint, hint, hint. Alpha, between ages 5 and 8, brainwaves change again to an alpha frequency 8 to 13 cycles per second, and the analytical mind begins to form at this point in childhood development. And children start to interpret and draw conclusions about the laws of external life. And at the same time, the inner world of imagination tends to be as real as the outer world of reality. Children in this age group typically have a foot in both worlds. That's why they pretend so well. So, for instance, you may ask a child to pretend that he is a dolphin at sea or a snowflake in the wind or a superhero coming to the rescue, and hours later, he is still that character. Ask an adult to do the same. Well, you already know the answer. So, beta, from ages 8 to 12 and onward, brain activity increases to even higher frequencies. Anything above 13 cycles per second in children is the frontier for beta waves. Beta goes on and up to varying degrees from there throughout adulthood, and it's representative of conscious analytical thinking. After the age of 12, the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, it usually closes. Beta is actually divided into low, mid, and high range beta waves. As children progress into their teens, they tend to move from low range beta up into mid and to high range beta waves, as seen in most adults. So if you look at figure 8b in your books, you're going to see that the progression of brainwave development from delta in infancy to beta in adulthood. You're going to look at the difference in the three ranges of beta. There's high range beta, and it can be twice as high as mid-range beta. Brainwave states in adults, an overview, beta. Now, as you're reading in this chapter, most likely you are in the everyday waking state of beta brainwave activity. Your brain is processing sensory data and trying to create meaning between your outer and your inner worlds. So while you're engaged in this book's material, you may feel the weight of your body on your seat. You may hear music in the background. You may glance up and see out the window. All of this data is being processed by your thinking neocortex, alpha. Now let's say that you close your eyes. 80% of our sensory information derives from sight and purposefully go inward. Since you are greatly reducing sensory data from the environment, less information is entering your nervous system and your brain waves naturally slow down into the alpha state. So you relax. You become less preoccupied with the elements in your outer world, and the internal world begins to consume your attention. You tend to think and analyze less. In alpha, the brain is in a light meditative state. And when you practice the meditation in part 3, you'll go into an even deeper alpha state. So on a daily basis, your brain moves into alpha without much effort on your part. For example, when you're learning something new in a lecture, generally your brain is functioning in low to mid-range beta waves. You're listening to the message and analyzing the concepts being presented. Then when you've heard enough or you particularly like something interesting that applies to you, you naturally pause and your brain slips into alpha. You do this because that information is being consolidated into your gray matter. And as you stare into space, you are attending to your thoughts and making them more real than the external world. The moment that happens, your frontal lobe is now wiring that information into your cerebral architecture. And like magic, you can remember what you just learned. So theta and adults' theta waves emerge in the twilight state, or that lucid state during which some people find themselves half awake and half asleep. The conscious mind is awake while the body is somewhat asleep. This is the state when a hypnotherapist can access the subconscious mind. In theta, we're more programmable because there's no veil between the conscious and subconscious minds. Delta, for most of us, delta brainwaves are representative of deep sleep. In this realm, there's very little conscious awareness, and the body, it's just restoring itself. As this overview demonstrates, when we move into slower brainwave states, we move deeper into the inner world of the subconscious mind. The reverse is also true. As we move into higher brainwave states, the more we become conscious and attend to the external world. With repeated practice, of course, these terrains of the mind will begin to become familiar to you, just like anything else you persist at. You will come to notice what each brainwave pattern feels like. You'll know when you are analyzing or thinking too much in beta. You'll observe when you are not present because you are swinging from the emotions of the past to trying to anticipate a known future. You'll also sense when you are in alpha or theta, since you'll feel its coherence. And in time, you will know when you are there and when you are not. Okay, so I'm going to hit the pause button here because one of the things that I ended up doing is a video on how to get into theta state, because I know so many of my fellow mystics when we were in Cancun in the monastery, so many people were talking about, well, how do you know that you're in theta state? How, without having, some people bought, I think the Heart Math Institute has a device that you can buy that will tell you, the whole point of the Heart Math Institute is they're trying to get you into heart and brain coherence. So they have a device that can measure, I believe, your heart and brain waves. I don't have the device, so I couldn't tell you specifically, but I know you can look it up on theheartmathinstitute.com. And there's a company called Muse that also creates a device that you put in the probes. It's almost like a headband, but it goes around your head this way. And I actually have one. And it will let you know when your brain is in theta state. But I will tell you that I know when I'm in theta state by the feeling. I don't have to have, in fact, I haven't used that for actually a very long, over 6 months, but you can feel, and I wish somebody would have told me this before, because for a long time, I was not sure if I was in theta state. And then I started noticing when I kind of go into a deeper trance state, I actually would feel a shift. And now the shift isn't as obvious. It seemed to, for a while, it seemed like it was really obvious. It almost felt like downshifting in a car. When you take your gears and you downshift, it's like all of a sudden it's like, and like things seem darker, deeper, and like the void feels vaster. And so I went on to describe this in a YouTube video where it instructs people, because I had so many people that were private messaging me